Groupthink. We've talked about how it's very dangerous, how a group of smart people can get together and convince each other to do the wrong thing. So what leads to groupthink, or what are some of the symptoms? Here we go. This illusion of invulnerability. Again, we're a room full of rocket scientists. How can we be wrong? We're all really, really smart people. Collective efforts to rationalize or discount warnings. Again, they ignored or actually tried to hide the faxes coming in and say, here's the actual test data of these seals. They actually had done this. They took the seals down to a cold temperature and they measured their ability to seal, and they found out it really dropped off at 32 degrees when they started to freeze. Unquestioned belief about the group's inherent morality. We can't be wrong. This can't be a mean thing. We're all good people. Certainly we wouldn't risk these astronauts' lives if we thought the risk was extremely small, right? So they convince each other we're all good people here and we're all doing the right thing, when in fact it may be wildly dangerous. Stereotype view of enemy leaders. Often people that do things to a different group, they put them at risk or whatever, they sort of stereotype them. They see them as not people, actually. It's very common in war, right? The first thing you do is try to make your enemy not be people. And certainly if you look at movies like Star Wars, right, that's why the stormtroopers wear helmets that cover their entire face. So when you shoot them, you're not shooting down people, you're shooting down, things. Right? And if you look at the Star Wars cartoons that my kids watch, right, they are in fact fighting robots, not people, because it's okay to blast robots. It's not okay to blast people in terms of kids' cartoons, right? And so you will, it's called dehumanization, right? And certainly in World War II, there was a big effort to dehumanize the enemy. So it's okay to kill them. It's okay to blow them up. It's okay to bomb them and burn their cities and all of that. Very common. Everybody does it, right? It just makes it easier to do what it is you're trying to do during war. There can be direct pressure on a member. You hear stories of like a jury, right? They have to make a unanimous decision, and they'll put pressure on somebody who says, no, I don't think there's enough evidence to vote guilty, and the rest of them will turn on them, right? They'll get on them, they'll make them explain it over and over again, and they'll put a lot of mental, psychological pressure on them to join in with the group. We want to all be on the same page here. You can see, particularly if I was making a decision at work where I thought someone's health or their life would be at risk, or many millions of dollars or something, I would want the decision to be unanimous. So if there's somebody in the room who said no, I wouldn't want them to go out of the room saying no, because if it doesn't work out, they get to say, look, this group screwed up and I told them no, and they said, yeah. I would want them to say, yes, I agreed, so we can all do the best we can to downplay it, sweep it under the rug, whatever they're trying to do. And that's what the self-censorship of deviations is. If somebody disagrees, we're going to self-censor. Each person, too, they don't want to be seen as not a team player, right? As not getting along with the group, as not supporting the goals of the organization, so they're going to give their agreement to this questionable thing, like launching the space shuttle when it's too cold. A shared illusion of unanimity. So yeah, if the decision is unanimous, it must be right? It can't be wrong. It must be right if the decision is going to be unanimous. Right? And then sometimes there's these self-appointed mind guards. Their job is to jump on anybody's case who, in fact, would dare to disagree with the group, because we all know how important it is that we all totally agree on this, what we deep down inside know is a risky decision. All right, so some things we can do to prevent groupthink. So if groupthink is so dangerous, we should put some effort into presenting it. So assign everyone the role of critical evaluator. So it's okay for anybody to say, how do we know that? It's okay for anybody to ask questions, is this okay? I was listening to an interview of a guy who's an Air Force lieutenant colonel or a colonel, and he's flying this giant cargo plane and has 30 people as passengers on board. And he's going to Alaska, and they told him in the briefing, he tells the crew, you're to call me by, there's a new thing the Air Force is doing, and he tells them, you're to call me by my first name, right? I'm not Colonel, I'm Bob, or whatever his name is. Okay, Bob, Pilot Bob. And then he's to call them by their first name, and he said, I was looking at this kid who's a 19-year-old. He's in charge of the cargo in the bag. In this case, the cargo happens to be people. But generally, they have somebody back it right, keep track of stuff, make sure it stays strapped down, and you can't have things bounce around your airplane, all that. So He's basically the flight attendant back there, and he's some 19-year-old kid who hasn't been in the Air Force very long, and he's like, I just know that this kid is not going to call me by my first name, and he's certainly not going to feel comfortable telling me or asking me a question about something that's my business, not his business. And so after the meeting, he talks to this teenager about asking where he's from, and he tries to get him on a one-on-one basis, engage him in some social conversation so he'll feel comfortable talking to him, the big bad colonel, who's the pilot, right? So anyway, so they're taking off, and the plane's not very heavy, and they're climbing really fast, and they said that they're going to, they had it in their head that they were supposed to fly at 19,000 feet. So when you fly a big plane like that, you get clearance. There's like roads in the sky that these planes have to be on, and these roads, of course, not only are in different directions, but they're different heights, different altitudes, so you don't obviously crash into other people, because there's roads coming from different directions. Think about an overpass in a highway, right? One's on top of the other. It's exactly how it works up in the sky. So anyway, so they got their assigned flight path, and they're following it, and they think they're supposed to fly at 19,000 feet. And so they're calling up the altitude. They're at 10,000 feet, they're at 11,000 feet, 12,000 feet, and they're at 14,000 feet, and they're 14,500, and then all of a sudden the voice kicks in, and he says, yeah, we're, and they're getting ready to go through 15,000 feet, and the kid, the teenager, comes on the intercom, and he says, excuse me, Pilot Bob, isn't our ceiling at 15,000 feet, which means that's the height we're supposed to fly? And the pilot and the co-pilot somehow got it in their head that they were supposed to be flying at 19,000 feet. So immediately the co-pilot gets on the radio, and he radios back to the control tower and says, "What's our assigned altitude?" And they said, 15,000 feet. Don't you dare! Don't go above it. There's somebody up there. So they turn the plane. Climbing fast, and they turn the plane over hard. People almost fly out of their seats. Things are airborne because of the positive G's lifting up and all of that. And they level the plane off. And as he's doing this, the pilot sees the co-pilot make a really strange face, and he's looking up, and he's like, "What is he looking up to God on?" And he looks up, and there is a huge 777 jetliner full of people coming in from Japan. Right, these guys are going up the West Coast. It's coming in from Japan. It's just loaded full of people. And he said, had they not leveled off, if they kept going up, they would have flown right up and hit the bottom of this jetliner, and they would have crashed both planes. Right? He looked it up. The number of people in that plane, the number of people in his plane, it would have been the third largest air collision death loss in the history of the world. And he would have been the pilot who did it. Why didn't it happen? Because a kid, a 19-year-old who didn't know how to fly, who was scared to talk to officers, right? He called him Pilot Bob, and he was the one who said, "Oh, wasn't it 15,000?" Very politely, very shyly, wasn't it 15,000, not 19,000, right? So he saved everybody, including himself, right? So the moral of the story is the kid gets a big steak at anywhere he wants when they landed. The pilots were more than happy to take him out and wine and dine him, right? So that's what we mean by critical evaluator. Everyone should be allowed to ask. Everyone should be allowed to make comments, right? And it only has to work once to be worth all the hassles from years of putting this effort in. All right, so we'll stop here, and we'll come back to these because these things are really valuable to know.